All right, we're out here with Cassian, and we're going to kind of go off script just a little bit today with what we're working on for him in the partner program. And that's kind of the beauty of how we run this program, is that it allows us to do such a thing. So recently, and kind of unexpectedly it sounds like, we've encountered some issues with Cassian going after cars, or, it sounds like he's like, going after cars, barking, lunging as they come up. Sounds like there's some what we call loading behavior. And Mom mentioned that it definitely looked like there was like some elements of herding dog nature going on in there, which she's very familiar with, so she would know. So when we have a problem behavior, I generally want to look at it two ways. I want to break it down and make sure, obviously, that we come up with a way to effectively stop the behavior when it's happening. But obviously we want to prevent the behavior from happening in the first place. So I typically will, and mixed in there I will say, is sometimes we do have obedience that we can rely on to just get us through certain situations, meaning it's almost a band-aid solution with obedience sometimes. So we could teach him such a super strong heel command that he ignores all other distractions. However, and that's helpful that's totally valid and actually a great tool in your belt for that type of issue that you're having. But it doesn't fix the problem, right? Unless he's under command, he's still going to have a hard time coping with vehicles. It doesn't teach him to change his mind about that. So the other part, along with fixing the problem when it happens and potentially having some band-aid solutions to get us through really tricky situations, we also need, I also like to kind of pick apart why the dog is doing it. Is it fear-based? Is it a biological fulfillment issue? I think for Cassian, and from what it's being described, especially when I hear like he's got some herding dog attributes happening. Let me just double check what that noise is. Oh, Alex's watch is ringing on top of the shelf and it was making the craziest sound. Anyway, so I want to make sure that is there some function that isn't necessarily being met in his everyday routine in his life. Obviously Cassian gets all the exercise, all the mental stimulation, all those boxes are being ticked, but sometimes with dogs, especially when you've got a herding dog, or if you've got a dog that's genetically very purebred dogs, we see this more often than necessarily mutts, where they have a very strong drive and it leaks out into these problem behaviors. So a herding dog typically wants to rein in chaos. They see something moving fast or making a lot of noise or a combination of the two, and they want to kind of sheriff that. They want to strike, they want to use their teeth, and they want to be loud, they want to bark, and those are all typical of herding dog problem behaviors. So if I had to guess, it sounds like he's got some fulfillment issues going on. He's not necessarily finding an outlet that really spins the herding dog dial for him. And it's leaking out in this way where he's kind of going after cars. Cars are loud and they make fast movements, so that might be kind of triggering him there. So I want to see if there's something we can do to invoke and relieve his need to do that behavior. So we want to kind of find an appropriate outlet for it in a way that mimics it as close as possible, so that it actually does fulfill that need. And then what we can do, not only are we going to give him an outlet for that behavior, but we can start to add in some controls with that. So if we have the ability to, you're good. Yeah. You have a timer going off on your watching video. So while while we're developing, and it should be a game. So it's a game that we play, right? That you get to kind of chase and fight and strike and bark and attack and reel that in and chase, if we didn't say that already. But we can also interject some obedience and some coping skills for being in the presence of that thing and not interacting with it. So I'm using this flirt pole right now, and this is actually one that I recommend for GSDs and those types of sporting dogs, because they like to kind of stalk, chase. But something like this is great too for him. He obviously likes it. But we're really like, we're looking at what type of play or what type of behaviors, and typically like with play, or in this case, like where we're replacing that activity of chasing cars, what it usually mimics, it has some elements of predation. So there's, chasing, attacking, stalking, good boy. Sounds like there was some loading behavior involved, so that could be an element of like stalking, like he's watching. Herding dogs will do that as well. So what kind of, your little toenails caught from here, what activity can we do that will essentially provide the same opportunities to express that behavior? So it could be simple as something as a flirt pole. I almost wonder if we could potentially introduce, this is gonna sound crazy, an RV car, so a remote controlled car. Because it has the wheels, it has the movement, and it really comes close to the car situation where we can completely be in control of it and really work on teaching him how to cope with that car potentially moving around and looking like an opportunity to him, and teaching him to actually not go after it, and also giving him an opportunity to do that safely. So hopefully you're kind of picking up on what I'm putting down here, and that's starting to make sense. So the concern you might have when hearing me suggest this would be, well, what if, he becomes obsessed with this RV car, which could totally happen, actually might happen, right? For my dog, I have a German Shepherd. He's absolutely and totally obsessed with his tub. And when he would jump into lava for it, essentially. He's absolutely enamored. He loves that tug toy and he is obsessed with it. However, with how we do this type of training, he has the ability to completely ignore it. I can swing it around, I can give it to my kid and she can throw it. It can be present, and he has the ability to ignore it. And we teach what we call emotional fluency through these types of games. So if we had an little RC car rather, that might be a really great way to tap into that intense focus that he's getting and have something to work with, while also giving him an opportunity to express himself the way he wants to. Because I think that when that's happening, it doesn't sound like it's fear-based. He's not barking or lunging at cars because he's like, I'm scared of that thing. He's like, I like to bark and lunge and do this behavior. So if that's the case, I'm inclined to potentially look at that as an option. So his training session today, I was gonna do a little bit of like tug work and games to kind of show you the process of how we would potentially start to introduce that with like an RC car. So he's fully engaged in this game now, so that's good. I'm gonna teach him an out, which we would do with the car as well. An out or drop it command. So in a game of tug or a game with this flirt pole, we would be teaching the drop it. And that should be a pause in the game. So if we had like a little remote control car, we would say out or drop it or pause or whatever you want that word to be. And that would simply mean stop chasing it. Or we could come up with whatever we want it to mean. But generally having a pause in your game is the first place to start with these types of games. So I'm gonna get him really latched on here. Good. And basically, and he's got he actually has what we call a soft mouth, even though he like bites hard, it's easy to take this toy like away from him. If I grab it, okay, we could probably work on that. Versus like a German Shepherd or a Malinois who's gonna bite it with their full mouth and like, or a pit bull, and absolutely hang on like a terrier would. So yeah, he's using his front teeth, very typical of herding dogs. And that's all really, it sounds nerdy, but it's really fun to like, it's not only fun to like observe and read and see, but it's important because if you know what kind of creature, if you know what the kind of monster you got going on, then it makes it easier to find that activity that spins those dials. So he's got a hold of that, and basically I'm just gonna grab the toy. Typically we would grab it on either side, but he's got the end of it. So I'm just gonna kind of scooch my hand down and I'm gonna make the toy dead. As soon as he stops nibbling on it, good, okay, I'm gonna re-engage. Good boy, oh, good boy. Ooh, such a good boy, oh, you got it, oh, you're so strong. Leg sweep, good boy. All right, so now I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna kind of loosely hold this and make the toy as like dead as I can. If he kind of tugs on it, I'm just gonna kind of good, yes. So as soon as he drops it, the toy becomes alive again. What I don't wanna do is add tension to the toy in that moment, which will create that like, ooh, like that, what's the word? He's gonna wanna tug it. Oh, good boy. All right, so I'm gonna grab a hold of it again. Good, yes. So now that he's getting the idea and it's happening a little bit quicker, I can start to name this. So I'm gonna call it OUT. Good boy. Oh, you got it. You got it so strong. I think it's starting to load on watching us play over there.
Yeah, make sure to use the dryers.
Oh, I got you, sorry.
Yeah. Pretty wet out here.
Huh?
Getting pretty wet out here.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm almost done. All right, so we're gonna say out. Good. Okay. Perfect. And maybe you've already taught him a drop it command, so he's heard that little cue and the tone of my voice, and he was like, oh, okay. Good. Out. Good. Yes. Perfect. So he's got that really well, and then the next marker we're going to introduce is the last like little thing I want to end on. With this game and with potentially using like that car like we mentioned, we also want to make sure that this game is happening inside what we call windows of opportunity. So when I start this game, when I bring that toy out, especially if it's something like a car, I want to avoid him becoming absolutely obsessed. Well, and he most likely would become obsessed with something like that, but we would want to make sure that it's happening in these windows. So we would say something like, I've got the RC car, and I might set it down, but that does not mean anything to you unless I say the magic word, which might be something like Cassian ready, and then we release him to go play. We could even get him to the point where the car could start moving, and he doesn't get released to go bark and chase at it until we say the magic word. Those are all really helpful skills to do. So we have that open window magic word, and then we have the closed window word. So when he's engaged in the toy, especially when we're talking about tug like this, I want to make sure that I do not make him drop the toy and then end the game. So I don't want to say OUT and then end the game, because that will actually make it so that his dropping of the toy becomes less prompt. You can do that eventually, but I try not to make it a habit. So I try not to call the dog off of the toy with my release command, my pause command. I want to just end the game. So I'll deep dive into this a little bit more. I want to see what your thoughts are on potentially introducing something like that to him. So I'm just going to end the game while he's still playing and say something like, enough, good. If he re-engages with the toy, good. And that's it. And eventually we might even kind of like tempt him and say like, oh, this looks like it's an option, but it's not. You know, obviously he's looking at it right now. Over time, we're going to reward him for actual neutrality. Right now, he's being polite. He's not re-engaging. But he's not necessarily actually neutral to it. He looks better now because he's more distracted. But he's not actually, you know, good. He's not like neutral to it. So we're going to start working on his state of mind around this thing so that he's not in a state of arousal all the time. So we'll talk more about that. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. He's doing great. We'll kind of do another round of this later on. Good job, Cass.
Good job, Cass.